everybody, welcome back to my channel. It's gonna be super echoey in here. Sorry, I turned my living room into a gym. So now it's just all the sounds ricocheting everywhere. Sorry about that. But I thought it would be fun to film in here for this video because since sports are one of the things that has taken a pretty big hit with not being able to happen anymore this season, I thought I would turn this video into a bit of a sports video. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our foundations and we're gonna put them head to head, and we're gonna have a bracket that I am building. And that bracket is gonna determine which foundation at the end of the day is the best foundation to wear while working out. So the plan is there are 4 different categories. Within those categories, there are gonna be 4 different types of foundations that are going to be competing against each other within each of those categories. I am going to split my face down the middle and have one foundation on one half of the face and the other foundation on the other half. So that way each time we can see exactly which foundation is best for working out. And usually my workouts last, no, lay down. This is the opposite of laying down. Oh my God. Okay. All right, go lay down, Tracy. He's gonna stand with me for a minute here. So we are going to split the foundations on my face so that way we can really see between the 2 foundations what works best. And for my workouts, they usually last anywhere between an hour and a half and 2.5 hours. And so it's a good amount of time to test what can really last because I do sweat a lot. I touch my face quite a bit. And so this is just an expedited process. Instead of testing the makeup for 24 hours, we're just gonna jump right in and see if it can last even an hour and a half. I am pretty excited and I'm going to go grab my brackets and we're gonna take a look and see what the different categories are and which foundations we're gonna be testing. I'll be right back. All right, so the first category that we are going to have is going to be the mattifying category. So these are going to be all of our foundations that are super duper matte, really give full coverage on there, really nice. And these are going to be the 4 that are competing against each other. The first one is Fenty competing against Maybelline. And this Maybelline one is the Fit Me Maybelline. That's a really nice mattifying one. So those 2 are gonna go head to head. We'll see who wins. Next is gonna be the Beauty Blender foundation against the Natasha Denona foundation. I think those would be some pretty good matchups. I actually really like all of these foundations. So this one's gonna be a tough one for me to have to try and decide because they all work pretty well. So it'll be interesting to see which one can, you know, take the heat, I guess. Up next is going to be the tinted moisturizer category. So for this one, we have the Laura Mercier tinted moisturizer, the Shiseido. It's labeled as a foundation, but it works like a tinted moisturizer for me. So when you hear me read the label and I say foundation, it's really a tinted moisturizer. Next up is gonna be Stila. It came in a really weird jar. We'll see how that goes. And then lastly, the ColourPop, which I am definitely not a huge fan of that. With both of these 2, these are my favorites. And so I'm purposefully wanting to have to choose which ones are the best. So I'm trying to stack my favorites up against each other and then my least favorites to try and determine amongst each of those which one is better. So that's why the Shiseido and the Laura Mercier are stacked up against each other because they are definitely my 2 favorites. That is that category. Next category is going to be the hydrating foundation category. So for that, again, we have Fenty. Then we have the Maybelline Radiant Dream foundation, the Tarte foundation, and the Benefit foundation. So those should be kind of interesting. Both the Tarte and the Benefit were not perfect skin matches for me for my color, and so that's why I put those 2 together, just because it would have looked even weirder if like I had paired the Benefit with the Fenty, where the Fenty is a true color match for me and the Benefit is just like way darker than it should be. So again, that's why I paired these the way that I did. And the last category is going to be the luxury foundation category. So I think there's no surprise with some of these, but we have the Hourglass foundation against the Charlotte Tilbury, and we have the Pat McGrath against the Givenchy. Givenchy? I don't know. You can tell I totally spend the money. This one's definitely trial size, and so we'll see how that goes. With all of these 3 specifically, the Hourglass one I think is pretty good, but it still has like a weird finish on my face, and so I don't know. And then obviously we know my thoughts on the Charlotte Tilbury and the Pat McGrath. And so really all of the luxury ones have so much to gain and really nothing to lose because I already don't like them. We'll see how that goes. Okay, so those are the 4 categories that we're going to be dealing with. And for this video, part 1, it's just going to be the mattifying and the tinted moisturizers that we'll be looking at. Part 2 is going to be handling the hydrating and the luxury foundations. Part 3 will cover the quarterfinals of all of them. And then part 4 will be the semifinals and the finals. So this is going to be a 4-part series because first off, it's just going to take a really long time to film all of this. But then also, I would never want to put anyone through the torture of watching a video that long because that's going to be a lot to cover. So this way you get it broken down where you can really just kind of hear me out on each of them and then place your own bets and see how this goes so we can really turn this into something fun. Okay guys, so day 1 is going to be starting off with the mattifying foundation round. So the first 2 that we have competing against each other are going to be the Fenty and the Maybelline. So let me show you those real quick. This is the Fenty Beauty and mine is in the shade 185, and this is actually a really good shade match for me. One of my favorites. And the other one is the Maybelline Fit Me in the shade 120 Classic Ivory. This is probably going to be a little bit dark on me. Just to put the 2 of them together, you can see that the Maybelline's definitely quite a tick darker than the Fenty. That way, you know, whatever. We'll really be able to tell which side is which then. We are going to go ahead and start with the Fenty, and I'm going to throw that on the right half of my face. Okay, first half of my face is done. I did build it up quite a bit on there. Normally, I probably wouldn't wear quite this much foundation, but it still feels pretty lightweight. It's not overly bothersome. This is a little weird how lopsided my face looks right now. So it'll be good once it's all blended out and everything. So let's go ahead and move on to the Maybelline. Okay, so now both foundations are on my face, and it's kind of interesting. As dark as the Maybelline looked initially, it's, I would say, only maybe 1 or 2 shades darker than the Fenty. And so I think that's kind of interesting. So I guess it really does fit you, as it says on there. Both are suitably caked on, and so we shall see what ends up happening just on initial view. I think that the Maybelline is settling just a little bit more into the lines on my face. All right. Let's get to working out and see what happens. Okay, so now we're back from the workout. From what I can tell, doing a quick review, the Maybelline surprisingly seems to have held up better than the Fenty did. From what I've seen in the mirror, it looks like nothing has really changed on the Maybelline side. It still looks the same as it did before. I mean, when I first put it on, I did notice some creasing around the mouth. That's still there, but it hasn't gotten any worse. I haven't seen any change anywhere else. Whereas on the Fenty side, I did notice that it's starting to get a little patchy on my forehead. Around the eyes, the color is starting to break up a little bit as well. And just as a whole, you can see that there is makeup on my face. Whereas on the Maybelline side, I can't tell that there is makeup on there, but my face does look nice. Shocking upset, because I love Fenty and I was totally expecting them to win. But for the first round of the matte, it looks like Maybelline is the winner. So the board has been updated. Maybelline is the winner. Okay, now on to day 2 of the mattifying foundation showdown. Whoop-ya! All right, so for that, we're gonna have Natasha Denona against the Beauty Blender foundation. Let's go ahead and take a look real quick. I'm gonna have the Beauty Blender be on the right side of my face and Natasha Denona be on the left side. So this is the Beauty Blender Bounce Foundation. Looks like this. It's kind of a cool container with like a lock button, and then you're just supposed to push the button and then squeeze it out on here and then kind of pounce the blender on top. I usually just still squeeze it into my hand because I don't want to make a mess on the container. So in case you were wanting those added details, I'm sure. We're gonna go ahead and throw the Beauty Blender on first, and then we'll get into the Natasha Denona. Okay, so right half of my face is done, and now we are going to jump into the Natasha Denona next. That looks like this. And this is supposed to be full coverage, and mine is in the shade 10Y Fair, which BT-dubs the Beauty Blender. I forgot to say what shade this was. It is the 2.10C. There you go. Okay, both foundations are on, and as we can clearly see, the Natasha Denona side is definitely lighter than the Beauty Blender side. I think that's probably because I bought the Natasha Denona one in the dead of winter when I was as pasty and ghosty white as you can be, and the Beauty Blender one I got as it was starting to head into some of, not quite spring, but I mean it was getting a little bit warmer, and so my face was already a little bit tanner because this is pretty much a very good color match on this side, whereas this one is definitely a little bit too light for me at this point, especially given that I've been spending a decent amount of time outside taking the pups for walks in the last couple weeks, and so and we've had beautiful weather out here, so that's why I am a little bit tanner. Let's go ahead and get into the workout, and then I'll check back in afterward. The only thoughts that I really have on it are that you can see a little bit around the edges. I did a decent amount of blending, but mattifying foundations do a great job for me around my nose, just because that's a very oily area for me, but around the sides of my face where I tend to be a lot drier, they do tend to cake up a little bit more, and so that's unfortunately unavoidable. So yeah, let's knock this workout out. Okay, and we're back post-workout. After reflecting in the mirror for a minute, the things that I noticed the most were that on the Natasha Denona side, it was building up around the creases of my nose, as well as really getting into the creases around my mouth. Whereas on the Beauty Blender side, I didn't really notice too much change at all. Nothing was really building up all that weird or settling into fine lines any more than any normal foundation would. On the Natasha Denona side, I also noticed that it was starting to separate around my eyes, which is normal as moisture builds up, but I didn't notice that on the Beauty Blender side. So with that being said, let me go get my bracket. As you can see, for the mattifying category, it has been updated with Beauty Blender. I'm standing way too close. It has been updated with Beauty Blender. So when we get to the quarterfinals, it's going to be the Maybelline Fit Me foundation against the Beauty Blender foundation. All right, we have reached the second category of foundations. So now we are on to tinted moisturizers. And for today, we're going to be testing the Laura Mercier against the Shiseido. This should be pretty interesting because these are definitely my two favorites. And so it's going to be a little bit heartbreaking, but also very telling as to which one is the better one. And then for tomorrow, we'll be testing the Stila against the ColourPop. And so that'll also be very interesting because I'm not a huge fan of either of those. So we'll find out which one's the better of the two best and which one's the better of the two not so good. So let's go ahead and stick around and I will show you the application and what my face looks like after everything's on. Okay, so first up is going to be the Laura Mercier Tinted Moisturizer, and this looks like this. It's in a nice little tubey. And this is in the shade 2C1 Blush. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw that on the right half of my face. And then the next one that I'm gonna put on is the Shiseido. And this is called the Synchro Skin Glow Luminizing Fluid Foundation. It does have SPF in there, but this is what this one looks like. It's in a cute glass bottle. And again, even though it says that it's a foundation, it acts like a tinted moisturizer, which is why I put it into this category. And so that will go on the left side of my face. Let me go ahead and get into the application, and then we'll do a quick talk about which one at the beginning already looks good, and then, you know, jump into the after. Okay, the Laura Mercier side is on, and you can see it is a teensy tiny bit darker than what my normal skin tone would be. But in my opinion, with the way that it sits on there, because of how moisturizing it is, it just looks like my skin has a nice glow to it. It's not so extremely dark, but I do have to be careful about blending it down my neck correctly on there so that it blends out nicely. But for the sake of this, since we're just testing the wear and tear, I'm not really worrying about blending it out completely on there, so if there's a line, sorry. But other than that, it sits really, really nice, super light feeling. I don't even notice that it's on there. It just makes my skin feel nice and hydrated. If you are someone that's wanting, you know, a nice coverage, but just a good hydrating feel to it, this is really nice without going quite as full coverage as like a hydrating actual foundation would. Let's move on to the Shiseido. Okay, the Shiseido is on, and I would say that these are almost identical shade matches. In the mirror, I really can't see a difference on the shade. I mean, if I didn't know that I had put on 2 different tinted moisturizers, I would never know. And so I think that's pretty nice that I hit that one on the head, because I think that with the first 2, that was one of the disadvantages, that because there were such stark contrasts on the shades, it automatically kind of made me, I feel like, lean one way or the other, whereas with this, it's legitimately, the tint is identical, and so it's just 100% going to be about how they hold up during the workout. So let's get into this workout, and I will check back in with you guys afterward. Okay, we are all done with the workout, and after looking in the mirror, not a lot has changed. I mean, they were already pretty much identical in the beginning, but afterward, I can say that it's kind of interesting. Both of them have kind of melted nicely into my fine lines, so there's very little creasing going on. There's only one slight difference between the 2 at the end of the day, and that is that the Shiseido side started to become ever so slight, and I mean like the slightest of the slightly more cakey, whereas on the Laura Mercier side, it stayed as natural and super smooth as it was from the beginning. And so that's really the only difference that I noticed. And so I think that given that, that the Laura Mercier side in this particular case is the winner. So let me go get my board and we can review. All right, as you can see, the board has been updated. So Laura Mercier is the first tinted moisturizer winner. And let's move on to tomorrow, where Stila is going up against ColourPop. All right, so we are on the second half of the tinted moisturizer category, and as you guys just saw, next thing up is going to be Stila competing against ColourPop. I gotta be honest, I'm not too excited for today because I hate the ColourPop one. I've noticed a lot of people tend to have an issue with it, and I'm definitely one of those people. It doesn't work well with my skin type. And then the other one, the Stila, I have not actually attempted yet, but it looks real funky. So let me go ahead and show you guys what those 2 look like. So the first one is the Stila, and it is very pretty packaging. I mean, it comes in this super pretty jar, and this is called the Lingerie Soufflé Skin Perfecting Color. Mine is in the shade 2.0. It's super moussey, if you can see that in the texture. So that's gonna be interesting to try and deal with. And then the other tinted moisturizer is the ColourPop Pretty Fresh. Looks like this, and it does have hyaluronic acid in it, which I know is all the rage right now. And mine is in the shade Light 6W. Let's go ahead and jump into the application. Whoa. Oh my god, that is super zoomed in. Ooh, that's slightly better. Okay. Okay, well, the Stila has now been applied to the right half of my face. I can definitively say that the initial application is a nightmare. It looks awful when you're first trying to blend it out. It's very patchy, doesn't want to really do anything, just looks awful. But if you keep working with it and keep blending, it does kind of melt into the skin a little bit better. But I mean, like, my forehead looks awful. It's super patchy along here and around my nose and upper lip area, and definitely like right along here. You can't even blend it out. Like, I don't know what's happening, but it looks horrible. So that's fun. Let's go ahead and move on to the ColourPop and see how that goes. Okay, the ColourPop is now on, and it's definitely lighter by a significant degree than the Stila side. Fun fact, after how terrible the application of the Stila product was, suddenly, all of a sudden, the application of the ColourPop was amazing. And so I don't know if we can say that my skin has suddenly magically changed to where the ColourPop is just a great tinted moisturizer now, or if it's just because the Stila side was so horrific to apply. But either way, initial thoughts on the ColourPop are significantly different than what they were like 5 minutes ago. I actually don't mind the ColourPop side anymore. So this is going to be interesting though, because at the end of the day, we're not testing how badly they apply, we're testing how durable they are during a workout. And so even though the ColourPop side initially is now my favorite compared to the Stila side, we have to see which one holds up better after the workout. I will check back in after I am done. Okay, So the workout is done, and I can definitely say that the Stila side has done a lot more separating and becoming more patchy than the ColourPop side. On the ColourPop side, I only noticed just a little bit right along the hairline by my temple, and the rest of the face pretty much remained unchanged. Whereas on the Stila side, definitely just not great at all. Super patchy all over the place, separating. You could very clearly see where there was tinted moisturizer versus where it was just my skin. So it was not good at all. So with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at our bracket and see where we stand. All right, so for tinted moisturizers, we are up to the quarterfinals. We are gonna have the Laura Mercier against the ColourPop. And let's just do a quick recap of the mattifying foundation category. For the quarterfinals, we're gonna be having the Maybelline Fit Me against the Beauty Blender. All right, that was part one. The first half was a round of 16. Next half in part two is going to be the luxury categories and the hydrating categories. So I think that's going to be pretty interesting. One thing I can definitely say so far from what I'm noticing is that the tinted moisturizers, for the most part, I think are probably, my guess is going to be that they are going to be the ones that end up coming up on top at the end of all of this. Because so far it seems like with the heat of my skin as I'm working out, the tinted moisturizer just really kind of melds best with that, whereas everything else tends to get a bit more patchy. That's my guess. I would love to know what you guys think is gonna happen. Place your bets down below. Let me know in the comments who you think's gonna take it. And hopefully I'll see you guys in part two for luxury and hydrating. If you like this content, go ahead and give me a subscribe or a thumbs up or whatever you feel like doing. I'm just really happy that you guys made it to the end of the video with me. And other than that, just go have a good one.